boy returns from death, and Jesus told him what will happen in 2025. Imagine staring death in the face and coming back with a message so powerful it could change the course of humanity. This is the story of a 12-year-old boy who experienced something beyond this world. He died for a few minutes, and in those moments he says he met Jesus, who revealed what awaits us in 2025. But what's more shocking? This revelation connects to Barron Trump, a name you wouldn't expect to find in a story like this. What this boy saw will challenge everything you think you know about the future. Was it a glimpse of what's to come, or a divine warning we can't afford to ignore? Stick around, because this story has a twist that will leave you speechless. Daniel was like any other 12-year-old boy, curious, full of energy, and always asking questions. He lived in a small suburban neighborhood where he spent his days playing soccer with friends, riding his bike through the park, and exploring the woods behind his house. Daniel's inquisitive nature made him popular among his classmates, but it also made him a deep thinker for his age. He loved to ask big questions about the universe, life, and what happens when we die. Though his family wasn't particularly religious, his grandmother often spoke to him about God. She was a devout woman who believed strongly in prayer and the unseen workings of the divine. "Daniel," she told him one afternoon as they sat on her porch, "there's more to this world than what we can see with our eyes. One day, God might call on you to do something big. Be ready." Daniel would laugh it off at the time, brushing aside her words as one of her many stories about faith. But her voice, calm and full of certainty, stayed with him. One Saturday afternoon, Daniel was playing in a soccer tournament. It was a sunny day, the kind where the world feels alive and bursting with energy. His parents sat in the stands, cheering him on as he darted across the field with his usual enthusiasm. The match was intense, and Daniel was determined to score the winning goal. Suddenly, in the middle of the game, he stopped running. He clutched his chest and staggered before collapsing onto the ground. The crowd froze. Parents rushed onto the field, and the coach yelled for someone to call 911. Daniel's teammates stood in shock, their excitement from moments ago replaced with fear. Paramedics arrived quickly, and the scene became a blur of chaos. His parents watched in horror as the medics performed CPR, but the seconds dragged on without any sign of life. For 7 long minutes, Daniel's heart stopped. His body lay still, and by all accounts, he was gone. But those 7 minutes would become the most pivotal moments of his young life. As Daniel's body lay lifeless on the soccer field, he experienced something he couldn't explain. He later described it as an immediate sense of release, as though he had been lifted out of his physical body. The pain and panic were gone, replaced by a strange calm. He saw the field below him, the frantic efforts of the paramedics and his parents crying. But the scene grew dim, and he felt himself being drawn towards something else, something far greater. Everything around him faded, and a light appeared in the distance. It wasn't just any light. It was unlike anything Daniel had ever seen. It pulsed with warmth and energy, radiating a feeling of peace that enveloped him entirely. The light grew brighter as he moved toward it, yet it wasn't blinding. Instead, it seemed to pull him in, inviting him closer. He felt no fear, only a profound sense of belonging. Then he saw him. A figure emerged from the light, walking toward him with a grace that seemed to transcend human movement. Daniel knew immediately who it was: Jesus. He didn't need an introduction or an explanation. Deep within his heart, he recognized the figure before him as the Son of God. "Daniel," Jesus said, his voice gentle yet commanding. "Do not be afraid. I have something to show you." Daniel couldn't speak, but he didn't need to. It was as though Jesus could hear the thoughts in his heart, answering questions before Daniel even had a chance to ask. He felt completely seen, completely known, and completely loved. Then Jesus reached out his hand, and the space around them began to change. Daniel felt as though he were floating, weightless, as Jesus guided him into a series of visions. "What you see now, you must remember," Jesus told him. "And when the time comes, you must share it." The first vision was of the world as it is now. Daniel saw people rushing through their lives, disconnected from one another. He saw families sitting in the same room, but lost in their own worlds, staring at screens instead of each other. He saw conflicts erupting in cities, people shouting and fighting over their differences. Everywhere he looked, there was division, political, racial, and spiritual. "This is the world as it is," Jesus said, his voice filled with both sadness and hope. "But it is not the world as it must be." The vision shifted. Daniel saw images of natural disasters, floods, fires, earthquakes. He saw people fleeing their homes, searching for safety, but finding none. He saw leaders addressing crowds, their words stirring both hope and fear. One face among the leaders stood out, a young man standing on a podium, his presence commanding attention. Around him, the world seemed to hang in balance, as if his actions could tip the scales in one direction or another. "This young man will play a role," Jesus said, his tone steady. "He will make choices that will ripple across the world." Daniel tried to focus on the face of the young man, feeling as though it was important, but the vision began to blur. Before it faded completely, Jesus turned to him and spoke again. "The year 2025 will be a turning point. Humanity will stand at a crossroads, and the choices made will shape the future for generations." Daniel's heart raced as he absorbed the words. What did it mean? What was he supposed to do with this knowledge? And who was the young man he had seen? He tried to ask Jesus, but the vision changed again. Now he was shown what could be. Daniel saw a world filled with light, a world where people of all backgrounds came together in love and unity. He saw communities rebuilding, families reconnecting, and leaders working for the good of all. The chains of division and fear that had bound humanity were broken, replaced by bonds of compassion and understanding. "This is what I desire," Jesus said. "But humanity must choose it." The visions left Daniel overwhelmed, but one detail stood out above all others: the mysterious young man. When Daniel woke up, he remembered the face clearly. After some time, he recognized it. It was Baron Trump. The revelation left him shaken. Why would someone like Baron Trump play a role in this divine plan? What connection did he have to the choices humanity would face in 2025? Daniel didn't know the answers yet, but he understood one thing. He had been chosen to carry this message, and he would do everything in his power to share what he had seen. As Daniel struggled to process the visions he had been shown, one detail kept resurfacing: the image of the young man in the crowd. His face was etched in Daniel's memory, as clear as day. At first, Daniel thought it might have been a symbolic figure, someone meant to represent the potential of a new generation. But as the days passed, something strange happened. While scrolling through the news with his father one evening, Daniel saw a photo that stopped him in his tracks. There, on the screen, was the face from his vision. "That's him," Daniel whispered, his voice trembling. His father glanced at the screen, puzzled. "Who, Baron Trump?" "That's Donald Trump's youngest son," he said, his tone casual. But to Daniel, this was no casual moment. He knew, without a shadow of a doubt, that Barron Trump was the young man Jesus had shown him. Daniel couldn't understand why someone like Barron would appear in his vision. He was just a teenager, a private figure who rarely appeared in the spotlight. Yet Jesus had been clear. This young man had a role to play. But what was that role? Was Barron destined to lead, to heal, or to divide? The questions raced through Daniel's mind, but he had no answers. All he knew was that Barron Trump's future was somehow intertwined with the pivotal events of 2025. As Daniel grappled with the meaning of his vision, he couldn't shake the feeling that his life had been forever changed. When he returned to consciousness on the soccer field, he gasped for air as if being born again. The first faces he saw were those of his parents, their expressions a mixture of relief and disbelief. Around him, paramedics were stunned. "We thought we lost him," one of them said quietly. But Daniel wasn't paying attention to their words. His mind was still reeling from what he had just experienced. In the following days, Daniel tried to explain his vision to his family. At first, his parents were skeptical. They chalked it up to a vivid dream or the effects of oxygen deprivation. But as Daniel spoke, his voice steady and full of conviction, they began to see that this was no ordinary story. He described the light, the presence of Jesus, and the visions of humanity's future with a clarity far beyond his years. What stood out most to his parents was Daniel's mention of Barron Trump. "It's strange," his mother admitted. "We've never talked about him before. How would you even know who he is?" Daniel had no explanation other than the one Jesus had given him. "This is not for you to understand now, but when the time comes, you will see." Daniel's parents decided to support him, even if they didn't fully understand what had happened. They encouraged him to write down everything he remembered, hoping that clarity might come with time. But for Daniel, the weight of the message felt overwhelming. How could a 12-year-old boy carry something so important? And how would people react if he told them the truth? Despite his initial hesitation, Daniel began to share his story. It started with his grandmother, the one person he knew would believe him without question. As he recounted his experience, her eyes filled with tears. "Daniel," she said softly, "I told you God had a plan for you. This is it. You've been chosen." Her encouragement gave Daniel the courage to speak more openly. He began telling his story to friends, family, and even members of his church. The reactions were mixed. Some were deeply moved, believing his vision was a genuine revelation from God. Others dismissed it as a child's imagination, though even they couldn't explain the level of detail Daniel provided, especially about Barron Trump. Word spread quickly, and soon local pastors invited Daniel to speak at their congregations. He stood before the crowds, nervous at first, but growing more confident as he shared the message Jesus had given him. "I don't know why Barron Trump was shown to me," Daniel admitted during one talk, "but I know it wasn't random. Jesus made it clear that he has a role to play, and it's tied to the choices humanity will face in 2025. The mention of Barron Trump sparked curiosity and debate among the audience. Was Daniel implying that Barron would become a leader, a spiritual figure, or something else entirely? The ambiguity of the vision left room for interpretation, and people began speculating wildly about what it could mean. As the story gained traction, Daniel was invited to share his experience on local radio and online platforms. His sincerity and passion captivated audiences, but his mention of Barron Trump drew the most attention. Some accused him of using the Trump name for publicity, while others saw it as a divine confirmation of the family's significance. But for Daniel, it wasn't about politics. "This isn't about Barron or me," he told one interviewer. "It's about the message Jesus gave me. It's about the choices we all have to make." Through it all, Daniel remained focused on the vision's core message. Humanity stands at a crossroads, and 2025 will be a defining year. Whether or not people believed him, Daniel felt compelled to share what he had seen. The stakes were too high to stay silent. And though he still didn't understand why Barron Trump was part of the story, he trusted that Jesus had a reason. After all, the vision wasn't just for Daniel, it was for the world. As Daniel's story continued to spread, the reactions it evoked became more intense. People from all walks of life reached out to him, some with messages of support, others with skepticism, and still others with outright dismissal. Yet, Daniel remained steadfast. He knew what he had experienced, and the weight of the vision kept him moving forward. His story was no longer just about what had happened to him. It had become a call for reflection, a challenge to humanity to choose a better path. One question loomed larger than any other: why Barron Trump? It wasn't long before people began debating the implications of Daniel's vision. Some speculated that Barron would take on a significant leadership role in the future, perhaps following in his father's footsteps. Others saw him as a symbolic figure, representing the younger generation and its potential to reshape the world. Daniel himself didn't have all the answers, but he was clear about one thing. "This isn't about politics," he said during a live interview. "This is about humanity's future. The person I saw, Barron Trump, is part of the plan, but not in the way people think. Jesus didn't show me his role to spark division. He showed me to remind us that every individual, no matter their background, can play a pivotal part in God's greater plan." The discussions surrounding Barron Trump's role took on a life of their own. Media outlets picked up the story, some spinning it into sensational headlines, while others approached it with curiosity. Social media exploded with debates, memes, and theories about what Daniel's vision could mean. Amid the noise, Daniel focused on the heart of his message: the urgency of 2025 as a turning point for humanity. As he shared his vision in more churches and community events, Daniel emphasized that the future wasn't set in stone. "Jesus showed me two paths," he told one gathering. "One leads to unity, light, and healing. The other leads to division, darkness, and destruction. The choice isn't up to a single person. It's up to all of us." He spoke passionately about the chains of fear, hate, and prejudice that bound humanity, urging his audience to break free from those chains and walk in love. One evening, Daniel was invited to speak at a larger event than he had ever attended. Hundreds of people filled the auditorium, and thousands more watched online. He was nervous as he stepped onto the stage, but the memory of Jesus' words steadied him. "You must share what you've seen," he reminded himself as he gripped the microphone. He began by recounting his experience, the light, the presence of Jesus, and the visions of the future. He spoke about the choices humanity would face and the role each person had in shaping the outcome. When he mentioned Barron Trump, a murmur spread through the audience. Daniel paused, letting the moment settle before continuing. "I know this might seem strange," he said, "but Jesus showed me that even those we don't expect, those we don't understand, can be used for his purpose. Barron Trump is part of this story, but so are you. The future depends on all of us." The event was a turning point for Daniel. While many praised his courage and authenticity, others remained skeptical. Critics dismissed his vision as a child's imagination or a ploy for attention. Some accused him of promoting political agendas, while others questioned his credibility altogether. Through it all, Daniel stayed true to his mission. "I'm not here to convince everyone," he said in an interview. "I'm here to share what I was shown and let God handle the rest." As 2025 drew closer, Daniel's urgency grew. He felt the weight of the choices humanity would face pressing more heavily on his heart. He spoke about the importance of forgiveness, understanding, and love, urging people to reflect on their own lives and the ways they could contribute to a better future. "The chains I saw in my vision aren't just symbolic," he said during a community gathering. "They're real. They're the fear we carry, the hate we hold on to, the divisions we create. But Jesus showed me that those chains can be broken. It starts with each of us." Daniel's message began to resonate on a deeper level. People started sharing stories of reconciliation and healing inspired by his words. Families reunited, old grudges were forgiven, and communities came together to discuss how they could create change. Daniel saw the ripple effects of his story spreading further than he had ever imagined, and it filled him with hope. Yet, there were moments of doubt. Late at night, when the world was quiet, Daniel would pray, asking God for guidance. "Why me?" he often asked. "Why did you choose me for this?" The answer didn't come in words, but in a quiet reassurance that filled his heart. He remembered the light, the presence of Jesus, and the certainty of the vision he had been shown. That was enough to keep him going. In one of his most heartfelt talks, Daniel addressed the younger generation directly. "You are the ones who will shape the future," he said, his voice filled with emotion. "Jesus showed me that we stand at a crossroads, and 2025 is a year of decision. The choices we make now will determine what path we take. Will we choose love or fear, unity or division? The power is in your hands." As he spoke, Daniel couldn't help but think of Barron Trump. The young man from his vision remained a mystery to him, but Daniel prayed for him every day. "He has a role to play," Daniel told his audience, "but so do you. We are all part of God's plan. And every act of love, every moment of kindness, brings us closer to the light." Daniel's words were a beacon of hope for many, a reminder that even in the face of uncertainty, faith could guide the way. His story was no longer just about his near-death experience. It had become a movement, a call to action for people to step into their purpose and choose the path of love and unity. And as the world inched closer to 2025, Daniel's message grew louder, urging humanity to prepare for the choices that would shape its destiny. As the days turned into weeks, Daniel's story continued to resonate with people from all walks of life. What had started as a personal testimony of a near-death experience was now transforming into something much larger, a movement, a beacon of hope for those searching for light in an uncertain world. Daniel felt the weight of his mission deeply, but he also felt the undeniable presence of God guiding him every step of the way. He began to understand that his message wasn't just about 2025, it was about preparing hearts for the choices that would define that pivotal year. It wasn't enough to simply tell people what he had seen. He needed to inspire them to act, to step into the light, and to break the chains of fear and division that held them back. As Daniel reflected on the vision Jesus had shown him, he felt an urgency unlike anything he had ever experienced. This is more than a warning. he told himself. It's a call to action, a call to faith. In one of his most powerful talks, Daniel stood before a massive crowd. The room was filled with people hungry for answers, for direction, for hope. Many of them carried their own burdens, the weight of loss, division, or doubt. Daniel could feel the heaviness in the air, but he also felt the potential for transformation. He began with a question. Have you ever felt like the world is spinning out of control, like the darkness is closing in, and there's nothing you can do to stop it? The audience was silent, their eyes locked on him. I've felt that too, Daniel continued, but Jesus showed me something different. He showed me that the darkness doesn't have to win. The light is stronger. It's always stronger. And the good news? That light is inside each of us. Daniel shared the vision of 2025, emphasizing the choice humanity would face. Jesus didn't show me a world that's doomed, he said, his voice steady but filled with emotion. He showed me a world that's waiting for us to choose love over hate, unity over division, faith over fear. It's not too late, but the time to act is now. As he spoke, Daniel's words seemed to ignite something in the hearts of those listening. He described the chains he had seen in his vision, the spiritual and emotional barriers that kept people trapped in cycles of fear and judgment. Those chains aren't just symbols, he said. They're real. They're the anger we hold onto, the grudges we refuse to let go of, the walls we build between ourselves and others. But Jesus showed me that those chains can be broken, and the key, it's love. Daniel paused, letting the weight of his message settle over the crowd. I know some of you are carrying chains right now, he said softly. Maybe it's anger towards someone who's hurt you. Maybe it's fear of what the future holds. Maybe it's doubt that you're worthy of God's love. But let me tell you what Jesus told me. You are loved, you are seen, and you are chosen. The room was silent, but the atmosphere was electric. Daniel could see tears in the eyes of many, their hearts opening to the truth of his words. He continued, his voice filled with conviction. God has a purpose for each of us. He didn't just choose me to share this message, He chose you to hear it. He's calling you to step into the light, to break your chains, and to help others break theirs. As Daniel spoke, he felt a profound connection to the audience. This wasn't just about his vision anymore. It was about the shared mission God had entrusted to all of them. 2025 is coming, he said. And it's not just a date on a calendar. It's a turning point, a chance to choose the path that leads to light. But that choice starts today. It starts with you. Daniel ended the talk with a heartfelt invitation. If this message has touched your heart, if you feel the call to be part of something bigger, I invite you to join this community. This isn't just about listening to a story. It's about living it. Together, we can create the world Jesus showed me. A world where love wins, where chains are broken, where light shines in every corner. He gestured to the screen behind him, where the words, "Join the mission. Together, we choose light," appeared. Subscribe to stay connected, to hear more, and to walk this journey with us. You're not alone. We're in this together. And with God's guidance, we can make a difference. As the audience rose to their feet in applause, Daniel felt a deep sense of peace. He knew the road ahead would be challenging, but he also knew he wasn't walking it alone. God was with him, and so was the growing community of believers ready to answer the call. Daniel closed the evening with a prayer, his voice steady but filled with emotion. Heavenly Father, thank you for showing us the way. Thank you for your love, your light, and your grace. Help us to walk in faith, to break the chains that hold us back, and to choose the path that leads to you. Strengthen us for the journey ahead, and may we always be a reflection of your love. In Jesus' name, amen. As people left the event, many stayed to talk, to pray, to connect. Strangers became friends, united by a shared purpose. Online, messages poured in from around the world, with people sharing their own stories of faith and transformation. Daniel's story wasn't just inspiring change, it was creating a movement. For those who heard Daniel's message, it was more than a story of a boy's near-death experience. It was a divine reminder that even in the darkest moments, God's light shines bright. And as the world moved closer to 2025, that light became a beacon of hope, guiding them toward the future Jesus had shown. Together, they would choose love. Together, they would choose light. Together, they would answer the call.